Hello. Today what I'm gonna walk you through is how to color code your paragraph as a form of editing it. I have a full essay, intro to conclusion, here, except for the end of this paragraph. We're just going to be looking at the body paragraphs. So that's all I want you to focus on today is just the body paragraphs. Whether or not you have your intro and conclusion yet, you should at least have your body paragraphs. So I'm going to take you through what I want you to do. So the first thing you're going to do is color code your topic sentence and your concluding sentence. And I want you to turn them red so that way you can see them and make sure that they're connected. Because your topic sentence is stating the premise of your paragraph, which you're going to be arguing, and the concluding sentence should wrap back around to that. So my thesis was that Odysseus from the Odyssey and Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird share a number of heroic traits, emphasizing how heroes have mostly stayed the same between ancient times and present day. So this sample paragraph is going to be arguing that heroes have stayed the same, that they have more in common. So my topic sentence gave my first sort of element of comparison, and I said one obvious example of a similarity between epic and modern heroes is that in the case of Odysseus and Atticus, they both rely on their intelligence when faced with conflicts. So intelligence is my heroic trait. So I turn that red. If you just highlight it, and then you go to your text color and change the text to red. Then, at the end of your paragraph, you should have a sentence that ties everything back to this idea of intelligence as the trait that they share. So, my last sentence of this paragraph is, throughout history, from epic poems to the modern novel, heroes continue to use their intelligence to help them solve their problems, as evidenced by Odysseus and Atticus. So I can check and say, okay, am I talking about the trait? And I'm talking about how they have stayed the same, because that is my thesis, and you want to connect everything back to your thesis. So continuing, that's about staying the same, and then I have my trait. So that's good. The next thing I'm going to have you do is turn your quotations and your citations blue, so you can see where they are and how long they are. This sample paragraph, I made up quotes because I have better things to do than to write freshman English papers. But yours should be actual quotes from the Odyssey and from To Kill a Mockingbird. So I would turn this quote and my citation, which, notice my citation is Homer, space, book. So I can tell this is book from book 10, period, lines 60 to 65, because that's where I got this fake quote-ish. And then you're going to turn your other one blue, because you should have a To Kill a Mockingbird quote in here as well. Atticus does a smart thing with Mr. Yule in court, but in yours it would be the real quote, Lee, and then space, and then your page number. So you're going to turn those blue. So you should have two parts that are blue. And then finally, you're going to turn the part of the sentence you use to introduce your quote orange. So I have, in this situation, he uses quick thinking, colon, and then my quote. So I turn that orange, and then before this quote, I have, Atticus proves his intelligence during the trial scenes, where Harper Lee describes, comma, and then the quote, right? So this whole sentence, there's only one period between the orange and the blue, and it comes after your citation. Same thing here. There's only one period between the orange and the blue, and it comes right here. Now, if you have periods in your quotes because it's multiple sentences, that's fine. But otherwise, there should only be one period at the end. Okay? So go ahead and pause the video, do your color coding, and then come back. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do with the color coding. End pause. So you should have been finished color coding your paragraphs here. Now, the first thing we're going to take a look at is the quotes. So, in your quotes, make sure that in all 6 that you should have highlighted, or however many you happen to have, based on how many body paragraphs you're done with. Make sure they don't all use the same introductory method, right? Because we have the complete sentence with a colon, we have the introductory phrase, and then like the author writes, comma, so-and-so says, comma, whatnot. We've got the person and a verb, comma. We've got, you can include it as a tiny part of a longer sentence of your own. There were a number of ways that you could incorporate your quotes. We had Harper Lee describes that, space, and then your quote. But make sure they don't all start the same. Now here in this paragraph, I've used the full sentence and a colon, and I've used the introductory phrase with so-and-so describes, comma. So those are different. That's fine. But if all of yours are the same, if you are starting introducing all of your quotes with Odysseus says, comma, and then the next one is Atticus says, comma, or the author writes, comma, for all 6, that's boring, and you're going to want to change that up. So in that case, pause the video, look at all the things you've turned orange, make sure that you don't do too many of the same. And there really should not be 2 of the same in one paragraph as well. In my next paragraph, if I wanted to use a complete sentence colon, that would be fine, because at least then they all don't look the same. Okay? Next step, make sure you do actually have your citation in the blue. You should have 6 quotes total in your paper, so you need to have 6 citations. 3 of them will be Homer citations, 3 of them will be Lee citations. If you do not have those, you're going to have to go back and find where you got that quote, figure out the page number, figure out the book and the lines. Note that the Lee ones don't have a chapter number. It's just Lee, space, and then the page from our edition of the book. So if I read your paper and it says Lee 27, I should be able to go to page 27 and see that quote. Finally, the last thing we're going to do, and this is probably the most important part with the color coding, is take a look at the percentage of your paragraph that is made up with your quotes. If you remember from the last paper, I told everybody your quote should be no more than 25% of your paragraph. That means it's 1/4 quotes at the most, and 3/4 of your paragraphs should be your own sentences. So the easy way to do that, I think on Word is just, or on Google Docs or wherever you are, is just to count how many lines are in your paragraph, and then how many lines of those are made of quotes. So if I just start here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, like, we'll say 18, 17 and a half. So we've got 18 lines. Let me write that down somewhere. 18 lines. And out of those lines, how many of them are quote? So this blue one is about 1 line long. So we've got 1. And then this blue one is about 2 lines long. So 2 lines of quotes. So then if we do 2 divided by 18, it'll tell us how much of the paragraph is made out of quotes. And I go to Google, 2 out of 18 is 11%. So this one is 11% quoted material. Okay? And that is less than 25%. So we're good to go. I'll show you what to do if it's not in a second, but just go through and figure out how much of your paragraphs are the author's and how much is your actual writing. Pause. Okay, so I'm going to show you what to do if your paragraphs are out of balance. Here's my second body paragraph, and I'm going to color code it really quickly so you can see. So another way modern heroes can be traced back to the roots of epic heroes is that, at least for Odysseus and Atticus, both types of heroes are primarily motivated by their family. Ooh, that was a nice comparison, and very true. So we'll turn that red, and then my concluding sentence should also be red. But my last sentence of this paragraph is, this is when Atticus describes a world where all people are indeed seen as equal under the law and treated based on the merits of their actions and not their skin color. because this is the world he hopes his children will be able to grow up and experience. Which is a good sentence, but does that tie back to motivating family and the fact that the heroes are the same? No, it does not. So I would need to make a note, add concluding sentence. All right, and then if I go through and find my bits that are quotes, here's one. And then here's my other one. Okay, so the first thing I notice is that I don't have a citation here. There's one here, there's a Lee one, but there's not a Homer one. So I put add citation, so that way I know to do that later. And then I've got my intro to the quote here. I'm using that, which is fine. And then down here, there's nothing. There's a period and then my quote. That's problematic. So I'm going to need to add an intro to the quote. Harper Lee writes something along those lines. I can fix it later just so that I know I need to put one. I usually try to put things in bold or all caps so I notice later. Now notice in this paragraph, a lot of it is blue, which is already problematic. If you count up the lines, you'll notice that 8 of the 25 lines are quotes, which means that 32% of this paragraph is quoted material. That's higher than the 25% we want. So there are two ways you can fix this, okay? You can either shorten the quotes or you can extend your analysis. So, for example, my fake quote, he's talking about Calypso, and he talked about Calypso releasing him because he wants to go home to see his family. And this is again a paraphrase. Yours will be the real quote, but my quote is, he strategically answered and talked about how Calypso is super beautiful and way better than his wife is going to die because she's not immortal, and he really only wants to go home because his wife is growing old and he misses her a lot, which is why he cries all the time on her island. So if I used that part of the Odyssey, I could probably cut a lot of this out. I could talk about, I could probably cut this whole bit about where he talks about Calypso. And if you remember, if you cut something out, you just go ... So pretend in the real quote, I found a nice place to take that out. Wow, that took out 2 whole lines, right? So then I'm decreasing that percentage. The same thing to do with my Atticus closing speech quote. I probably don't need the whole thing. You can take a lot of it out. The next thing is to extend your analysis. Notice I only have 1 sentence of analysis about this quote. I have only 1 sentence talking about it and how it talks about his family. So I could go ahead and add like another 1 or 2 sentences down here. So his most heroic act is attempting to convince a jury of his peers to do their duty and evidence instead of being influenced by racial prejudices. Blah, blah, blah. He hopes his children will be able to grow up and experience. Readers can see this in Atticus. Throughout the book, as he teaches them the value of not only in the trial, but also as he teaches them the value of empathy and perspective and blah, 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 whatever. I could talk about a lot of things from the book. But extending my analysis here. So that way, hopefully when I go back and look, notice it's mostly black now instead of being mostly blue. And that means it's mostly something that I wrote instead of something I just pulled from a book. So that's the purpose of the color coding, and hopefully you can make your paragraphs a little bit more evenly or appropriately structured. So that way it's not, 75% quotes from the book with 2 sentences by you, because I don't care what Harper Lee and Odysseus, Harper Lee and Homer said. I want to know what you said.